Alright, so today what we're going to do is we're going to start making a hard surface decal type trim sheet. You can call it decal or detail, depends on which place you look. I mean, some people call it a trim sheet. I like to call it just a decal sheet because everything in here is not a tileable texture, and I like to think of my trims as tileable. They don't have to be. I mean, trim doesn't necessarily mean that, but that's just the way my brain works. So to give you an idea of what those look like, or something like, it's like this stuff, or this one. So things like this, these are what we're talking about, not the trim side up here, but this part right here. These are free floating and they're going to be used. What we're going to end up making, I will show you in a few days or in a little bit of time, but we're going to be making basically a box made out of stone and made out of metal, so we can show that. Anyway, we're going to make these, and these are really fun to make and cool to make. And if you get a library of them going, then you'll save yourself a ton of time when it comes time to doing some of this stuff. We're going to do the hard surface stuff first so we can use it across different places. But instead of just doing it as a trim, we're going to actually have a sheet that's made of decals. And this is one that I thought was pretty cool. I'll zoom in on it. Because he broke it out, or she broke it out into separate pieces like this. And this isn't the one I thought of. Hold on. Let me grab this one. I liked this one because each of I don't like the animation of it though. I like that one because Decal Machine's talking about Blender, but I don't really mind if you do it in whatever, but the thing to me is that the decals are floating. And the big thing we're going to focus on after we do the initial stuff is breaking the making sure they fit into a quad, basically, in most cases. Okay, so let's get straight into it. And to do that, let's talk about what we need for reference, or what we're thinking about with reference. I've done a few of these, so I just do it blindly. But if you want to get an idea of where the reference would come from, it's this kind of stuff. These little detail things that we want to try and do. These little arm things. These free-floating things are different, but the ones that are stuck on the surface, that's the kind of stuff we want. If we look at, I was looking for giant equipment, see if we can find some there. There's another good one, this TIE Fighter. I think this is actually done in Substance Designer, so it's more about a Substance Designer thing. But all of these, even the cuts in them, even this stuff, this is all what decals do, what we can do with decals. Here's a really good one. This guy does a ton of this kind of stuff. Right here, he may actually sculpt it out, but all these little greeble-y kind of things. And we could even talk about them using greebles, which are mesh bash or kit bashing stuff. Greebles is an old term for it. So, all of these little hiccups and bumps and stuff, we can build and get something close to and have fun doing it, and then use it on any model we want. So let's talk about what we're going to do this time first. First off, we're going to do it really simply. We're going to do it inside of Max, of course, because that's what we work on in this class. And we're going to use it. We're just going to start with the simple forms, and it'll make sense as we go further and further. First, we're going to try and do some insets. So insets are, let me see if I can find one of those references from the trim sheets. Oh, of course I closed that one. That was silly. There, decal trim sheet. There you go. If we look at the images, and let's say high res. There we go. If we look at insets, they are like these things, how they're inset here. These actually, it's not a very good one. Let me find a better one. This right here. See how that's inset in? Come on. New tab. It's an inset X or an inset oval or an inset circle or all these dots and all these things. We're going to do those, okay? And then by doing those first, and we're going to start with a triangle, a rectangle, circle, an X, and a dash to start with. We'll be able to build on those for multiple pieces. All right, to start with, the first thing we're going to do is make a plane in the background here. We're going to go plane right here from the top viewport. We're just going to drag it out. I'm going to make it, for now, because I don't know how big this thing's going to be, I'm going to make it 1,000 by 1,000 centimeters. It's not the big problem at this point. We're going to change this to a gray, like this. And then I'm going to right click on it and say Object Properties and turn off Show Frozen in Gray and freeze it. I could right click and freeze it, but then it makes the gray different, so I want to keep the color of the that I set it to the same. Okay, so we have our plane. Now, let me show you what we're trying to do so you can understand the process here. If I unhide this, looking like it's being cut into the ground is what we're trying to achieve. Because remember, all we're looking for is maps at this point. And those maps are going to go onto other objects to resemble detail that we don't have to actually pay for in geometry. So this is what we're looking for. So if you look at this, it's a rectangle, and then I have put an edit poly on top of it. And I know that's a little bit weird for me because I don't like using stack as much. And I've told you before, that's because stacks used to crash all the time, and I know that there's a lot of people who use stacks. Awesome. Okay, so let's just do one from scratch here, and I'll show you. So the numbers I'm going to use, I've played around with and got exactly what I wanted, but that doesn't mean they're correct. Oh, the other thing I should point out is that this plane, is a little bit below the 0 line because everything we build is going to be on 0, so we need to have this a little lower. Not a big deal. Something I did, and I just realized I didn't record when I did that, so let me freeze this back up and go to top and Z and grid. Okay, so I've got this object here. This is just simple rectangle. And what I was originally playing with is it being like settings of 200, 200 by 25 by 10 for the rounding of the edges. But the problem with that is that when I start doing the next part of it, it would break. It wouldn't give me the extrusion or the beveled edge that I want, which gives us the feel of the extrusion. And it's important, that part, that beveled edge, because when we take a normal off of something, if it's just straight up and down, it doesn't show up. So I'll show you that first. But to be able to show you that, and even if you're doing this from scratch or when you're doing it for yourself and you have a specific you want, the best way to do that is to add a actual modifier on top of it. And I just do it this way: edit poly. You want to edit a poly modifier on top, so it's actually giving you the same control as if it was an editable poly. And you can see now it's a flat polygon. Just to be clear, if I collapse this, it would have been the same thing. But since I don't want to collapse it, let me see if I can get it back. Yeah, I did this editable poly on top because when I start taking this polygon here and I extrude it or bevel it, I'm going to go down, and then I'm going to try and go in. I'm going to start to lose the original edge. So what I need to do is be able to figure that out dynamically. So that's where it comes into get out. You say, let's do like -10. I like to keep them even, and then I'll work with the actual shape prior to this to get the information I want so it feels better. So I'll say, okay, all right, and then I'll come back to, remember this was the original form in here, so I'll go drop back down, and if you want, what you can do too, I should tell you, is just get out of the edit mode there, copy a copy of it so you can see your edges and how the original was, and if you want, you can even just delete it. So there's the original. So what I'm going to do is go back down in the stack, and then I'm going to play with this. And the numbers I came up with, which doesn't mean it has to be perfect, I'm kind of just, these are for your own feeling. So I came up with 300, so it's a little bit longer like that. That's fine. And then I came up with, but you see there's these weird stretching things inside of here. So I changed this to 45, and then these are almost corners. And what's going on here is they're overlapping. If I look at they're actually clipping each other. That's why we're seeing it that way. So I'm going to change this by scrolling up and down to get what I like. And I'll get something like, I think I did 20. Yeah. So it's the same form. And if I want, I could pull this back to 250 or something, or even 225. Now that's the wrong number, 225. There we go. and it's much closer to the original form that I was thinking of. And now if I take this off, you can see that bevel going in. We could also come back up here and tweak some stuff. We could come back in here and say I want this a little bit deeper, though it doesn't really matter. Really all we need is the slant between the top and the bottom. So we'll come here. So the other thing I do want to do though is if I look at this, when I've been changing it, it's changed my smoothing groups. I want this to be one smoothing group. So I hold Control and double click, and I just need to change it to smoothing group 2 and make sure this is smoothing group 1. And yes, there's n-gons. I know, it's crazy, right? But if I change this to the standard color, you'll see now, I can delete this one. I got that. So that's what you should do. You should do it as a stack object, and you can collapse it after you're done with it. So I'm going to do some of the basic shapes, and then I'll come back in and show you some more complex shapes that we're going to start with. These are just the caps. These are the tops of screws. These are the hexagon pieces that go into making things look like they have you know, a hex wrench on it or something. It's all those little details that we were talking about. So let me go through this. I'll do it fast, and then I'll slow down when we start doing more complex objects. So I'll do this one. I'll do a circle, and then I'll do a hexagon, and I guess that's probably it. No, yeah, and then I'll come back and show you how to do some more complex shapes like an X. Okay? Or a plus. So here we go. Okay, so let's do more complex shapes. I'll change this to gray too real quick. So if I want to do a triangle, for example, it didn't change. I've been doing a lot of that missing here. There we go. I'm going to do a rectangle again because I don't really have a good triangle. I don't think we do. I think we can draw one if we want. But I'm just going to do a rectangle like this. I'm not going to chamfer the edges. I'm going to get it even though. So I'll just do like 300 by 300. And remember, we can modify this later. I'm try 200 by 200 because this is really big. I was trying to get these all the same scale next to each other. That way when I scale them down, they work. And then we may need larger edges and stuff too. But for now, this will work. So we'll just turn this up like this. And then we will add that X. Oh, no, actually, my bad. I keep doing that. So we're not going to actually turn this one up. We're going to change this to an editable spline. And then we're going to take this vert and delete it. We're going to grab all of these verts and change them to corners because we want this to be a right triangle. And then with those pieces selected, we're going to come in here and fillet. Now this is the dance that we're going to have, so we may want to wait to do this part until after we do the next part, which is going to be exactly the same as we did a second ago. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to push X, I'm going to say edit, and I'm going to go down to polygon, and then I'm going to do my bevel, grab my face and say extrude or bevel, and do -10 by -10, -10 by, and of course tab doesn't work, -10, and say okay. And now I've got my bevel in. Now I'll go back down to my stack, make sure I turn this on for the final, and I will grab that fillet with all those verts selected, and I'll turn it up and see if I can get something that works pretty good. And there we go. We can kind of get the same feel for that. You know, that's working pretty good. And people are like, why would you want a triangle, for example? Well, let me show you what you can use a triangle for real quick. Take this, we'll get out of Edit Spline, get out of Edit Poly, and then come here, and we probably want to do that smoothing thing too, but come here and rotate it like this, 90 degrees, so you have a duplicate, and now you've got one of those boxes with the beams that go right through the middle of it. So things like that. I mean, there's other things to use it for too, and you could do a regular triangle this way too. So the last thing I'm going to show you is how to change to make a cross or a plus or an X if you want. So I'm going to copy this one, and since I already have the rectangle done, all I have to do is this. I'm going to E and rotate it 90 degrees, so I got two of them, and then I'm going to delete the editable poly off this one here. Go to the original one. Hopefully, let's see if I grabbed it. Yeah, go to the original one. It's a little bit hard because they're gray. Let me grab this one again and make it a different color just for now. We'll make it purple like that. Okay, and we'll come to here, and then you should see that they are kind of on the same plane, especially when I go to edit rectangle and don't show the final. So they're on the same plane. They're actually. So I'm going to go and actually get rid of this edit poly, and then I'm just going to say convert to editable spline for this one, and then I'm going to say attach these two pieces together. And this is where it's going to get weird. Okay, we have some dancing we'll have to do, but that's why we do it above. But first, we need to make these all one object and do that cross that we want. So we're going to grab this edge, and we're going to come over to Boolean, and then with that on, we're going to grab this edge, and we're going to get this complex shape. Now, I'm not going to do any more of that at this point until we go and put the edit poly on. I can round these. We'll see if we want to, but I can go X again and say edit, and then go down to poly, and then go to plane, grab everything, and we're going to get some weird stuff on this one, but it may not be weird until we start doing the beveling those inside edges. I'm not going to bevel them on this one, but you'll see what's going to happen is it's going to complain, it's going to give me overlapping verts and stuff, oops, because the inside edges with their bevels don't, it's just too much of an ingon for it to understand what you want. So I'll come here, do -10, and say enter, and there we go. Okay, so I look at it, and now I've got it at the same resolution, and I can pull out and look at this, and there we go. So I've got all those shapes and objects, and that's the first part of it, and we'll go over the next part of it on the next video.